Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Can I Ask You a Question podcast. Each week on the podcast, we are asking questions, exploring them to unlock wisdom, to grow in our lives. And we're doing it through solo episodes or deep dive interviews with the most interesting people in my world. And this episode is definitely a different one, kind of one you could only do every 4 years. We're going to be talking about the election. It's actually, what time is it? It's 12:23 a.m. as we're recording this, and we have a finalized presidential election here in the USA. We're going to be talking about that. This is kind of episode 2 of our Bro Talk.
Yeah, it is.
Kind of a little subsection of our Can I Ask You the Question podcast. And it's time to put on my hat.
Oh, yeah.
I guess I can't with this headphones on.
MAGA.
But excited to be celebrating.
Super excited.
Make America Great Again. Go MAGA.
Let's go.
Yeah, super excited. We just found out that former President Trump is now going to is president-elect, is going to be president in 47 again.
Yes, it is.
We actually weren't together for watch parties. How was your experience watching that, Jeremiah?
My experience was really well. I had a few people over at my house, and it was really great. There was about 15 of us, and we were just excited from once the night started. We started really watching around 6 o'clock, and then all the way up and through. It was just really exciting. It felt like, I'm a Trump supporter, as I've said before. It felt like it was really encouraging in the polls at the very beginning, and it just continued to grow and grow and grow. And then once it came down to Pennsylvania and Alaska and like those upper states that were swinging towards Trump, it just like, man, it felt like we got them. And then as soon as Fox and all those just confirmed that, hey, Pennsylvania pulled through, it was like a breath of fresh air for everybody in the room. What about yourself?
Yeah, I've been looking forward to election day, like kind of like this, like it was the Super Bowl or Christmas. I mean, definitely early summer. Probably pre the debate with current President Biden and former President Trump.
Totally.
Actually, because it was like looking like it was going to be a win early on. My emotions weren't super high, but just kind of watching it unfold. And I told my wife, I think for the next few weeks, I'll just be thinking though, and it'll just be like, instead of a memory that's like, oh, I forgot the laundry, or I forgot to turn the stove off.
Yeah.
And you're afraid. It's like, oh man, I just remembered President Trump is coming back in office.
Totally.
The economy is going to change.
It's that fresh of breath there, just like the people I was at with the election party. We were just like, it's almost like a lifting off of like kind of off your shoulders. You're like, there's hope once again in America, because I think a lot of people thought there was going to be no hope, but it feels very hopeful and joyful now.
Yeah, absolutely. I did an episode a couple back, and actually it is now the most watched episode of the podcast, is where I compared Trump versus Kamala.
Yes,
and the 12 points. And I'm proud of that episode. And so in that one, it kind of laid out why, laid out the pros and cons of both of them. And for me, it became really clear, why I was pro-Trump and excited for him to take office. Not a perfect person, but has so much to offer for the nation.
Yeah.
We're the start of this episode is just kind of talking about our experience and just, living it in real time. It just happened. He just finished his speech.
Yes.
And then we'll get into some predictions and thoughts for what's next, so that's the results of the election and then kind of what's next. And, I did think one thing, I don't know if you caught this, I was watching the Daily Wire was where I was watching.
That's where I was watching as well.
And so I think in there they said that he actually had if they got it correct, he had the teleprompters removed.
Yeah.
So that's part of like why.
Well, it was spontaneous for his speech, and the two people came up, and Dana White came up, and
yeah. So I thought that was interesting. There was moments where I was like, this is kind of rambling slightly, but other moments were just super beautiful. And when he's talking about fighting for America, like it's not a written speech, he's just saying that from his heart. He's the same guy that got back up from getting shot in the ear and is yelling, fight. And he's saying, I'm going to give my basically every breath I got in the next 4 years to fight for America. And I loved hearing it.
Yeah, I loved it too. It felt like there's somebody who cared for us on the other side of the screen when listening to that. And then you hear all the people. And one thing I loved is it's not just us, or a lot of, I think, Trump supporters could feel isolated, but we won the majority of vote as far as we know now of the recording of this podcast.
Yeah.
that we won the majority vote, first time since, I believe, Reagan.
I think since President Bush in 2000,
Bush, okay.
whatever that was, early 2000s, but it's been like almost 20 years.
Yeah, which it feels great. Like we're not in the closet anymore. Like I never really was. I was pretty public, but like it feels like, okay, more than half of America feels this way. We voted this as a majority, and feels good.
Yeah, yeah.
To win hope around the nation.
I think super thankful for that the election that wasn't close.
Yeah.
I think and I really, so one of the things that has not happened yet is Vice President Kamala Harris hasn't conceded yet.
Yes.
As of this evening, or you're watching this in the morning, she may have, and I hope that she does that quickly, just to, as soon as she is assured that she really has lost. I don't expect her to do it before that.
Yeah.
But then just for the peace of the nation.
Totally.
That they just concede it. That's a peaceful, everything that they, accused Trump of not being willing to do, though he did it 4 years ago.
Yes.
Ultimately, he didn't, there was a peaceful transition to power. I'm hoping that they will just be good sports, concede it.
Yeah.
And we'll to move on. But that's not happened yet. So that's interesting.
Totally.
But I think it's great for the nation that it shouldn't be, I don't think there's going to be a lot of litigation. Shouldn't be.
I don't think so. I think people thought it was fair. It seemed fair from the beginning when I started watching, and I think it was a fair election, and I'm really happy with the outcome. I think a lot of people are.
Yeah. I don't know if the losers will feel it's fair. That's what we'll see on the news. We'll hear and we'll see. But hopefully they will. And I think from the Republican side, they were, I think they had thousands of lawyers, and I think tens of thousands, or I think over 100,000 poll watchers, volunteers.
Totally. To
keep things kosher this time around, which I'm super thankful for everyone that was a part of that. And,
yes.
And we just want, fair elections, true elections. But I think it is the popular vote should help actually show.
Regulate that.
What was that?
Regulate and show that, hey, it is he is the winner.
Yeah, just one more proof is it won the electoral, but won the popular, and hopefully show, they call it like a political mandate.
Yeah.
If you're trying to do something, but like it's like who voted for you to do that, but when like the majority, like you're saying that of the nation voted for Trump, he can say like, no, like they knew my policies and they want these things. They want the closed border. They want economic change. They want to drill, baby drill.
Oh yeah, I thought he was going to say that during his speech at some time, but he didn't. So I was saying it with the group that I was with. I was like, drill, baby, drill, get those gas prices down. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, definitely. There was a thought I was going to mention, and now I'm losing it. Any other thoughts on just kind of your experience of seeing him win, or with kind of how the votes landed, or anything like that?
Yeah, I think just my first initial thought, seeing Pennsylvania confirmed, and then Alaska being confirmed, and all those, and just seeing him win, I was just like, really, as well as the popular vote, as I was saying before, I think it's going to bring our nation closer together. Even some of the people that don't like Trump, or I'm not saying the radical leftists, but I think the people that were just slightly left, I think a lot of those guys will see, and those men and women voters will see, hey, the entire country voted for this. And I think as Trump helps the country and helps the United States, I think a lot of people are going to be like, okay, I'm glad he won and it made a good decision. Like maybe they didn't vote or something like that. I really do think like our country is going to come back together again, seeing the unified vote.
I sure hope so. That's excellent. One thing that we'll see if other people pick up on this, and if I'm totally correct, one thing that occurred to me that I thought was interesting, just kind of into, thinking back to 2020, and was that election rigged? Something I observed is, as far as I'm aware, the total vote turnout for this election was higher than 2020.
Yeah.
And 2020 was the highest it had ever been. I think it was the record turnout.
Yeah, so we broke records again. I don't know about that. You read that?
That's what I was hearing them say on Daily Wire.
Okay, wow, that's amazing. I think that's great for our nation and great as a people.
But... yeah, and here was the point I was going to make on it, though. If that's true, from what I understand, that means that, and basically that Kamala basically had just below Joe Biden's numbers of votes.
Yeah.
And then Trump exceeded his 2020 votes abundantly, and have even more. But here's one interesting thing with him winning the popular, but seeing this time around, I believe there was election interference in 2020.
Yeah.
obviously it's kind of irrelevant now. What people are saying, one of the most clear ones, I just heard JD Vance say on the Joe Rogan podcast. I think it was JD was talking about this. Now Vice President Vance, or Vice President elect, is that one of the clearest things that could have won Trump the election that like was interference was the Hunter Biden laptop and the 50-some security officials, intelligence officials saying that's a hoax, and the FBI contacting Zuckerberg and telling him to basically censor it because it was misinformation. So we know there was interference, but one of the things that on our side was said, and so I just thought this was interesting, is that there was no way that Biden could have got as many votes as he did, as unpopular as we thought he was, as uninspiring as we all thought he was. That itself, that he got like whatever that ended up being, 74 million votes or something, was proof it was rigged. But what I've observed is that result just got repeated now with Kamala, who's also not a very inspiring candidate. In what we think is a much fairer election.
Totally.
She actually did get that same turnout. So I actually think if that's true, that her number, the repeating of the same level of numbers on the Democrat side. Either someone would say, well, because they're cheating just as much. But from what I understand, we were watching this election a lot closer.
Totally.
That to me does disprove that the logic that said there's no way he could have ever got these many votes, therefore it must be fraud. Because she just got the same amount of votes.
It's true.
The only difference why we won is that we got
a substantial more
broke
votes.
Last 4 years ago's record. We broke it even higher.
Totally.
Does that make sense? So I thought that was interesting. Just looking back and comparing the two, I do think there was fraud. I do think that on the media side, the bias, but maybe. I also think it's good for us to learn where maybe we over assumed, or we reasoned our way into something, but then when the facts come, I think that kind of disproves that it was not at all. That's not even plausible that those were legitimate votes.
Totally.
Which is very interesting. So definitely some interesting things.
I think one thing that adds to that is something the Daily Wire said is that there were more first-time and new voters turnout than ever before. There was a greater turnout of young people going out to vote. So that would be that 18 to 22 age that went out and voted for the first time, or new voters, or not new, just new voters who have never voted before. Maybe they've been over 18 and isn't an 18 to 22-year-old, but new time voters going out and voting for the first time.
And that's that
greatest
surge.
Turnout.
That's that surge that made him
in the numbers. Both sides.
I think that's accurate. What's interesting is I think they said this was Gen Z's kind of first election. I think a lot of Gen Zers voted for Trump. It's not what I would have predicted.
It's not what I would have predicted either, but I think we want to be able to buy homes and we want to be able to afford things, and it's affected us. So I think we felt the pressure almost immediately out of high school, and I think it was like, okay, the Harris campaign probably can't do what the Trump campaign could do, and we just maybe looked at it logically and said, okay, 4 years under Trump, 4 years under Biden Harris, the Trump years looked a lot easier to buy a home, looked a lot easier to buy gas. So I think maybe they were just logical, and I'm surprised, and I'm with you. I'm shocked.
Makes me hopeful. And there was a lot of data like that apparently with in favor of Trump this time. I think a way higher level of male black voters this time.
And Hispanic.
Way higher Hispanic. I think a good turnout with the Asian Indian communities. I think they said that he had a higher disproportion of men than she had a disproportion of women. His was more even men and women than hers. Hers was like basically there was more even enthusiasm on his side, with the men being even higher than hers. Basically like her key base of the women didn't show up in the same level of passion as the guys did.
Definitely not. And one thing they talked about was the expectance they got of women voters to go out and vote against Trump and pro choice movements, because there was 10 states that had laws being put into effect for pro-choice or pro-life movements, and the one in Florida was pro-life that got overturned or got vetoed, I believe. So I think they didn't meet the quota
In Florida, that was pro-choice. They were actually trying to put in a pro-abortion
Yeah,
ban,
they were trying to put in something.
no, pro-abortion, basically legalize abortion, and that failed.
So
Yeah.
praise God to that. I think that's amazing.
Yep.
Thousands of babies' lives will hopefully be saved from that, and I believe it will. But they expected more women to go out and vote because of that matter, and it was a major less expected that actually went out and voted, according to the data now from Daily Wire. It's like they were expecting a lot more, the Democrats were, and then not as many showed up as they did compared to the expectance of young men to go out and vote, or men, and they did show up.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I think and we're going to move in just a moment to kind of, okay, what's next and looking at it. And I think that is very interesting to look at kind of where we're at right now, where we're going to be in the next few years as a culture.
Yeah.
I think, even just kind of jokingly, called the time you were with me, we called it Bro Talk. And there's these kind of bro podcasters.
Yeah.
And I think that played a big role in the election.
With Trump.
Going on some of those podcasts. And I think, though, the reason I think it helped Trump, and I think the reason those podcasts are popular, there seems to be a hunger, particularly among men, to like find themselves again, to
Totally.
embrace their masculinity, to kind of stop feeling ashamed about being a guy. And
yeah, I totally agree. I think we get pushed to maybe not show that we're so strong, or like, be a little more feminine. But there's these podcasters that are saying, the Dana Whites, the Theo Vaughns, the ones like that are like, it's okay to be a man, wrestle, love MMA, love monster trucks, like, kind of like a dude's dude, like your normal American dude that you'd kind of picture. And they're saying it's okay to do this, and all of a sudden these are the guys sponsoring and endorsing Trump. And I think it was a big push. I think the Joe Rogan one was a massive push and helped. So
yeah, I think that one was really cool. I think RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.,
yes,
the humility for him to suspend his campaign and join with Trump, I think that one thing might have turned the election.
I agree.
I think Elon Musk was then another huge one.
Yeah, I think Elon Musk was huge. I think actually massive. I think he's a huge part of it. JFK, I'm excited to see what he does with the health and
make everything. America healthy again.
Because we talked about the health stuff. We all want that. So I'm excited to see what he does. And I loved even in Trump's speech, it's like, Robert, you could have everything, just stay away from the oil.
Yeah, make us healthy, but just let us, hopefully responsibly, but drill and build our economy. One other thing, just kind of on tonight and the election night and the responses of that I thought was really interesting. And a little bit of reactions I've seen so far, and then particularly we both separately were watching the Daily Wire's footage of the election, is there was a sense of holiness, a sense of like holy awe, and really giving God honor.
Totally.
For what's happening. And I think there's this really belief that there was great evil and danger and injustice that was just avoided.
Yeah.
By not having Vice President Kamala be elected, and in the election of President Trump, and obviously not a perfect person. No one that's going to run is.
Yeah.
But I thought that was interesting. Like, I don't know if you saw, they actually took a 10 seconds of kind of silence and prayer.
Yeah, I did on the Daily Wire.
And then multiple times just kind of just referencing God, giving glory to God. Then President Trump is referencing God and actually saying in his speech, like, so many people have told me that, like, basically God saved my life for a purpose.
Which he did, I believe. I mean, I can't say for certain, but
I believe it too.
1 centimeter just has to be God's grace.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. And I think it's been this like almost decade long, 9-year struggle, I think, for Christians to like, do we embrace Trump? Do we not embrace him? Or does embracing him and honoring the parts that are good mean that we're honoring or affirming the parts that are bad? And that's been a kind of a complicated and messy question.
Yeah.
And I think it's really very interesting to see where we've all come. And I think he has proven himself over the 9 years.
Totally.
He has, I think, distanced himself, so it appears, from much that we would have maybe ever disagreed with or strongly disagreed with.
Yeah.
I think there, whether he's a born again believer yet or not, definitely I think a respect for faith and Christians, and has shown himself in his actions to be more righteous than many people who are in their words.
Yeah,
more
I
virtuous.
Agree. Oh, definitely. I felt the holiness all around. I mean, I follow a few of those right wing guys like Matt Walsh, Charlie Kirk, and B. Dodal, another young Christian guy that's on the conservative side. But all of them, I think, moments after Trump was elected, they're like, glory to God. I mean, amen. And all of them just like respecting and honoring God. Because I think a lot of people have to look at it and say God's hand was probably in this election. I mean, I think so, from the moment of the assassination attempt in Pennsylvania, where it was less than an inch away from a completely different reality of tonight and a different podcast and a different, maybe Kamala and whoever the other candidate would have been.
Yeah.
Like, we could be living in a completely different world. And I think, that was a moment where God's hand stepped in, and I think righteousness has prevailed. So
Yeah. It's very cool. It's very special.
it feels holy almost. It does feel like a holy moment. Like, when we saw him win, and it was like that fresh of breath there, I was like, okay, I think God's doing something in our country again.
It kind of feels, and I could be mistaken, that other times, because conservatives usually are Christians, or at least, and kind of appeal to that voter base. It doesn't feel like just a win for, it feels truly spiritual.
Yeah.
Versus just a win for good old fashioned faith and religion, and kind of an intellectual nod to faith.
Yeah.
With business basically as usual. I think actually, like, being a guy that's not like ever really pretending to be a super devout Christian, anything he says about God is more or less, I think, sincere.
Yeah.
Like, it's actually like God is doing something in his life. He is seeing God move. People around him are seeing God move. And then you have obviously a lot of Christians a part of the whole thing as well. And it feels genuine.
It does. I think this is like, along with it, I have an uncle who's super hardcore conservative. He's not a Christian at all. He says he's not religious, but he texted me right as like it was practically confirmed. And he says, looks like Trump's our 47th president. Praise God. It's actually a miracle. That's what he texted. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Like, I haven't responded yet. I need to respond, but I think it's incredible. I mean, he's not even a believer, but I think people even sense like, this is really a miracle that he's in the office.
Kind of against all odds, against the lawfare and the prosecutions and the assassination attempts and so much just hate in the media. Here he is, and this thing is happening. And then I'm coming to really like, if not love, Vice President
Vance.
I appreciate Vice President Pence, Vice President Vance.
Totally. I agree.
And, one thing I do want to continue to pray for the health and safety of President Trump pre-inauguration day.
Totally.
And after, too, because there is so much hate still against him.
Yeah, and pray for the protection of him and both of them.
Yeah, both of them. But I guess what I was getting at is I do feel secure knowing that we do have a great now vice president in the wings.
Yeah.
That's just an extra security.
Yeah, it is.
I actually listened. Did you listen to the Vance Joe Rogan podcast?
I did.
I think you listened to it before me, maybe.
Yeah.
So listen to that one. It was interesting that he had originally, I think, toyed with having Vance come to the Butler rally.
Yeah.
And announce that day, but he decided to wait and I think announced a day or two later. Mm-hmm. And so two things. One, if Vance had been there, who knows? Maybe he would have been killed. So it's so good he wasn't. And then secondly, though, if President Trump had been killed, he hadn't announced his vice president yet.
Yeah.
So it would have been turmoil.
Yeah, it would have been a throw up in the air of who's the Republican candidate now.
And I don't know that it would have been. I don't know if they would have picked Vance as their VP.
Totally.
Or what would have happened. And so, seeing things as they stand, I think there's a lot more security for the future, and it's exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's exciting to look forward to. Something some of the guys on the Daily Wire were saying is we have these 4 years of Trump and hopefully maybe 8 years of Vance, and I think it's a good role.
Yeah, I want to keep getting to know Vance more and see how he operates in this new role, but from where I'm sitting here, that looks really good.
Yeah, he looks like a good guy.
Seems like a sincere guy, a real guy, a person of real faith, smart.
Genuine.
Absolutely.
Personable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so the elections happen. President Trump is president-elect as number 47. I do think there is a small chance that President Biden would actually step down, and then it would be, I think, a weird situation where Kamala would actually be the 47th president for a couple months,
and then make him 48.
Yeah, which I think there's a lot of 47 merch that I think would get kind of wasted.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I don't see that happening. Have you read that? I don't.
Well, the reason I'm just saying is if he just decided to kind of like, I'm just done.
Yeah.
I just kind of gave up, or He might actually, that it would be actually kind of a form of revenge against her, maybe.
Totally.
Where she's like, gets to be president only for a couple months.
The jokes are going around on the internet that Biden secretly voted for Trump.
Yeah, I know.
Like with all the things he was saying in the garbage comment on Kamala's biggest like speech and everything like that, pulling from her attention. So
yeah, we don't know, but I don't know, but I do think there's that slight possibility that he would actually be the 48th president.
Yeah.
And obviously, I don't wish this at all, but if Vice President Biden's health deteriorated, and I do wonder, I do kind of just conjecture, like if she were the 48th, would she just kind of be like, hey, I'm probably never going to run again. Let's just go for it and like give a lot of amnesty or do a lot of
evil.
Yeah, do it. They pardon a lot of criminals. Like she might, legalize a lot of illegal immigrants.
I was slightly thinking that is like if they have 3 months left or 2 months left. Sorry, not 3, but 2 months left. They could do some damage in 2 months. Like it's with the power they have in office currently.
Yeah, it could.
I'm praying they don't. I think America would really be angry.
Yeah, I think
it would be so obvious.
That's what I hope they have just some respect for the nation and will the people, that they think it's kind of respectful to, probably play it cool for the last couple months of the transition.
Yeah.
We obviously have checks and balances. Things could probably get held up in the courts.
Totally.
And long enough that then Trump would take over. So it's unlikely, but I do have some interesting conjectures there. Just interesting. I hope it's just smooth and peaceful.
So normally the former vice president will announce and like welcome in and put it through the votes to
certify the vote.
Certify the votes. Does that work since Kamala is the running mate candidate, or?
I think she'll certify his vote.
That has to be kind of bitter.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that. I was like, if she's the one certifying the vote, man, that's a bitter ending for her.
Yeah, and I wonder constitutionally what they would have done if she had one. Someone else would have had to have done it, I guess.
Because she can't. Can she certify her own votes?
I don't think so. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I'm curious to research that.
Because when an incumbent president comes in, say Biden ran and won, would it be Harris who would certify his votes? Yes, right?
Yeah, you're right.
So
yeah, Pence would have certified Trump if he had
won.
If they had acknowledged his win or whatever.
Totally. So that's interesting. I mean, yeah, if she has to certify those, that's a really, really bitter loss for her. And that would be
totally
sad for her, but
be a challenge. Hopefully she'll just discharge her duty well.
Yes.
Okay. Now the election's over, just fresh over tonight. We'll kind of spitfire through some of these. What do you think's next for the economy?
I think a boost. I don't know if it'll be immediate like Trump says it will. I hope it does. I don't know all the details. I know he plans on tariffs and drilling, and I learned on why drilling and energy rises the prices so much is because if gas is 50% double, then it costs twice as much to drive the equipment to one place, and increases everything from groceries to houses and all of it. And I mean, if it's instantly fixed and my gas is lower and my groceries begin to get lower and the housing market drops, I mean, I'm super thankful. I mean, me and my buddy were joking at the election party. It's like, hey, we're going to be able to maybe buy a house within the next 4 years. Like, it wasn't a joke because hopefully the market does go down, which I believe it will.
Yeah.
So I'm believing for a good economy. Yourself?
Yeah, same. I think I'm anticipating, within the year to see drastic changes, and I'd love to see the next couple of years the interest rates go down, which would be great. I know for myself as well for a home loan, and I anticipate like I'm just kind of expecting economic boosts and relatively quickly.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be really good. I mean, I'm very optimistic, and there's a reason I casted my vote for Donald J. Trump. So I think that was the biggest issue and the biggest concern for all of the U.S. I mean, in most of the polls, it said the economy and the immigration were the two biggest issues. So
yeah. Okay, what do we think about what's next for Russia and Ukraine? Do you think that let's go fast on these? Do you think that he's going to be able to stop it quickly?
He says he will. I believe he has that level of authority and holds that level of power. I know he's not the president right now. He's just president-elect. But if he's to his word, he said it'll be done now that he's elect, hopefully within soon, before the end of the year. I'm hoping that there will be peace. What it will look like, will Russia come peacefully? that's a different question. I can't think inside of a dictator's mind. That's hard, but I hope.
I think his
I
whole
think
premise
Trump
is that
knows
he is going to
something more.
talk to Putin
Yeah,
and like I think that's the kind of the whole premise is that they will come peacefully, that they'll.
totally. Yeah, and I really hope it does. I think it will, but it's hard when you've taken over almost most of Ukraine to just let it go and go back into your own country as a ruler. I'm curious on how he'll handle it.
Yeah, and I don't think that they necessarily were trying to take all of Ukraine. I think they're trying to take back some of the territories where it's mainly Russian speakers, at least
Yeah,
originally.
yeah,
So I think that would probably be. I wouldn't be surprised if that was some kind of a peace agreement where they just actually keep that section.
yeah.
Or
And then Ukraine's unhappy, but we'll see what it is. So it might be Russia keep this, Ukraine deal with your losses, which Ukraine would be upset with. But I'm curious.
yeah, it'd be interesting to see how he handles that. Um, what's next for the Republican and the Democrat parties? Where do you think that both parties kind of go after this election?
Yeah, I think of it as like a sports rebuild team kind of. I'm new into the election parties, and I've only seen really a Trump administration for the Republic side since I've been voting and paying attention to politics. But I think right now it's like a strong team for a sports season where you have all your best all stars signed on great multiple long year contracts. And right now it feels like the Democratic Party is a team that's just at the bottom of the barrel and right now, and or maybe has like one or two star players, but it's time to blow it up and rebuild in a
Mm-hmm.
sense. And it seems like a rebuilding time for the Democrats. I mean, it doesn't seem like they have anybody in sight or anybody down the pipeline to really see a future for them. So it's a really big rebuild time for them, and we'll see what happens for them. But for the Republicans, I feel very confident with Trump and Vance and Elon. And not that Elon will run. He is, I don't know if he has a desire to, but just the support of Elon on that side and Dana White and whoever I think Trump chooses to endorse from this forward on after these 4 years will have a strong following
Yeah,
of the MAGA movement. I think the MAGA movement's not dying after Trump. I'm curious to see if it does, but I don't think it will.
yeah, yeah. I agree with that. I think I wouldn't have known if the MAGA movement was going to continue on until I saw JD Vance.
Yeah,
But I think he's the guy to,
continue it.
yeah, to keep that momentum and the way he's honoring of President Trump. But he's also, I think very able to speak his mind and would be able to if he was running for president,
Yeah,
and be his own man while still honoring and kind of that continuity, but moving into the future. What I think I'm most curious about is I think on the Democratic side, it'd be interesting to see if they kind of learn from their lessons and they truly do rebuild. They actually maybe go back to more center instead of really far left. If they maybe step away from some of the DEI and the picks based upon
yeah,
race and gender and things like that, and go back to qualifications. If they become less extreme on abortion, or if they just kind of can, or which would be probably beneficial to the Republican Party, if they don't learn their lesson and they just double down on their extremism
yeah,
and they just kind of complain for 4 years. And if they do, I don't think that that's going to build a great coalition or anything.
totally.
I think it'd be the Republicans' game to lose.
Yeah,
On the Republican side, the big question I'm having is, and I think the necessity that we need to do, and I hope that they do, is that they don't waste the win.
yeah.
That they don't waste the
agree.
momentum. That we don't play it so safe, trying to not offend our opponents, who we've just gone after relentlessly through the legal process of elections. We've been fighters
Yeah,
because we thought we were going to maybe lose because we were underdogs. But now that we're the top dog, will we take advantage of that in a good way and move some agendas forward,
yeah.
or will we just kind of play it nice and kind of run out the clock again? And I hope that we don't. But it's kind of our game to lose at this point.
I
Like a little
totally
bit.
agree. Yeah. One quick question to ask on top of that. Do you
Yeah.
think mainstream media is kind of gone and dead now? In the sense of, I'm saying like CNN, not dead, they'll still be there, but like their trust is just gone with the people, I think.
I don't think it's dead. I don't think it's dead. I think it's going to take a lot more, believe it or not, to kill it.
Really?
You know, we talk about. I'll give you an example. We talk about Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Hollywood's dead, or Hollywood's not going to last anymore. And there used to be that Hollywood was the Hollywood was literally the studios in that area of California.
Yeah.
But what Hollywood has become now, like a lot of Marvel movies are filmed in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah.
And then they're filmed in Hollywood, and then they're filmed in London with the tax credits, and they do some stuff in Australia, and I think it's Iceland or Greenland for tax credits. And now Hollywood is just code for the entertainment establishment.
Yeah.
So when we say media, do I think that the ABC, NBC, MSNBC, do I think some of those channels may go bankrupt or consolidate or die? Very, very possibly.
Yeah.
But by almost by definition, there will always be a majority media.
Yeah.
And that majority media will, I think, almost always be prone to groupthink.
Totally.
Be prone to corporate interest. Be prone to having a very curated narrative.
Yeah.
And so I think almost by its definition, I think like, is this a renaissance of the kind of the rogue, independent, free thinking podcasters? Yes.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason I'm here doing podcast. Super excited for that. But will they in the end almost become what? Will they replace the existing regime? Maybe.
Yeah.
But then they become kind of the regime. And once you have a lot of money online and a lot of employees, and if you didn't set it up right, you can easily become just as corrupted.
Yeah.
So I think that's like, I think it's like a quaint idea, but I think in reality, there's always I don't think the age of well-funded money machine media is done.
Totally.
I think maybe certain of the hosts, maybe certain of the game has changed, but I don't think the place or the draw. I think there's actually still a certain level of instinctive desire in people for like verified news.
Yeah.
I think we want to believe. I think people telling us things are legitimate. Mm-hmm. And that we're informed, and that if they kind of validate our thinking.
Yeah.
And so I think that's always going to be the place of like the mainstream media, and whether that's right or wrong, I think we kind of like, I think we want, and the way I kind of prove that is the independent guys still reference the New York Times, they still reference CNN, they still, because their opinion still, as much as we make fun of them, still matters.
Yes.
And I think they're like the big brother. And I think for a very long time, their opinion is still going to matter.
Mm-hmm. Do you think they'll be the big brother for long?
In what way?
Because this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking give them maybe a few more years. And I think a lot of the older generation will watch them, the boomers. But I think after maybe the boomers go on and after a few years, that generation passes, I really do think that won't be the source of news. I think it will be the podcasts, the YouTube channels, the things like that. And I believe like it's harder to get a power grip on those guys, specifically because of Elon. Well, as long as he's alive and keeps X open, we'll have a free space to always publicize, and their audience could always watch there. But YouTube, podcast, Apple, Spotify, like any of those places, I think that's where it'll be. And I don't think the big brother that has a hold on like whoever owns CNN or like run CNN, it's like shareholder, and you're like, oh, okay, if I don't speak on CNN, then I won't have a voice. But now it's like you go big enough and have a voice and become trusted, you could always go make a new platform like Joe Rogan episodes or whatever it is. He could always like say somebody's like trying to sue him specifically for that. He could go on and make another podcast with a different name and gain all of his followers there. And it's like, nobody will have a direct hold on the voice is what I'm trying to. Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of truth to that where, and this would be a whole other podcast would be that there are basically like spots, like narrow spots in the valley where it's easy to plug up the system.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the term for that. But they're basically vulnerabilities. Like within telecom, there are relatively easy ways to silence someone's voice.
Yeah.
And the person that kind of controls that thoroughfare, like YouTube has a lot of influence.
Yeah.
If they choose, they almost may become big media in who they allow to speak and not to speak.
Yeah.
Apple has a lot of power. So like you said, X is right now kind of our unencumbered,
totally
free speech.
Yeah.
But the other ones already are kind of controlled by corporate.
I agree with you, because even Joe Rogan said with Elon on just yesterday or 2 days ago that YouTube censored his video with Trump. Um, it was like one of his best videos, but they weren't like showing it to people, or like it wasn't getting views like it normally does in the few hours. It wasn't trending. And they're like, oh, YouTube's doing something weird with this. And Joe Rogan knew it, but on everywhere else, on X and Truth Social, skyrocketing million views like normal.
Yep.
So it's already getting to that level, which is sad. I mean, I'm glad Joe Rogan spoke up and said something about it. It shocked me, but it didn't shock me when I heard it just the other day.
Yeah. And so that's probably a whole other conversation, but that's what I'd say on that one with the media. Okay, quick break. Just want to remind you, wherever you're watching or listening, whether if it is on YouTube or Apple Podcasts or Spotify, would you subscribe to the show? Would you rate it and review it? And would you share it with a friend? Let them know about it. Was excited just to see the most listeners we've ever had this last week or so on the show, and want to keep that momentum coming. And so thank you for being a part of that. And then, let's jump in with our next one. What's next for abortion? Now that we have a Republican Senate, that we have potentially a Republican House, we'll see. We have a Republican majority Supreme Court, or conservative majority, and we have the White House again. What do we think next for abortion? What do you think?
I think it'll be great for those who choose pro-life. I mean, I really do, and I don't know how the other 9 states turned out. I didn't see any of them. I just know Florida for sure got vetoed on that pro-choice law. So I'm thankful for that, and I praise God for it. But I really do believe that there's God-fearing men and women in the administration that'll help fight for it, that Trump will bring in and place in. And I hope to just see it state by state. The one thing is that since Roe v. Wade is abolished, it is state by state. So a lot of the power is to the states. So I'm really curious on how that works on a national level, but I'm hoping state by state it just begins to get locked down and illegal across the board. And that's what I would like. I take the most radical view that no abortion since at the moment of like conception, no abortions at all. So that's my view on it. So I'd wish that for every state. I don't know how it exactly will work across each state, but I just hope stronger laws in each state, and even regulated laws. I mean, the ones that are like, I want to win every battle. I want to win the most extreme battle of no abortion, but I want to win the little battle if it's from 9 months to 3 months. I want to win that battle. I want it to go all the way, but I'm willing to win that battle. So even if those battles are won in New York or Wisconsin, or maybe those more extreme ones, that even we'd see wins there, is what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, that's good. What
about yourself?
So I did an episode on this a couple of weeks ago, and my policy position, and it was kind of looked at it from the moral, from the biological, from the political, the law side, and kind of came to realize that abortion is morally reprehensible. It's immoral. It's biologically inhumane, just that it is a living human being, and that it's constitutionally unlawful.
Yeah.
Because what is that inside the womb of the mother? It's not a monkey. It's not a dinosaur. It's a human being.
Yep.
And that human beings, and you don't have the right to kill another human being.
Yeah.
And so I believe the Constitution, one of the clearest things in the Constitution would be to protect the life and liberty of every, human being, basically American-born human being, particularly. That's what the Constitution would protect. So that's kind of my general policy. I came to believe that we have, probably actually in my very limited legal understanding, that the actually most logical legal position is actually a federal ban, initiated through the legislature. It could be initiated through the courts, because they have the right to enforce basically the Constitution.
Yeah.
But I think it'd probably be more acceptable if there was just a new law affirming the Constitution made.
Yeah.
That by the newest representatives of the states, at the federal level, in the Senate and the House. I think that it just makes sense. I think if the federal government's going to defend anything, it's the lives of its citizens.
Yeah.
A lot of things leave it to the states, but so that's my like more ethical and kind of like, that's my understanding of the best law. That being said, people that are talking about it. What was that?
I was gonna say I think Trump specifically said he wouldn't do a federal brand. I think that's one thing he ran on pretty strongly.
Yeah, but I'm saying I don't know if I don't know if I agree with him on an ideological level.
Yes, totally.
Now, on a political or practical level, on a wisdom level of kind of actually of leading the nation in a way that can build consensus and doesn't rip us apart,
Yeah.
I think he may be right,
Yeah.
and I kind of respect and trust him, and we'll kind of give him time to see let him lead, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's a great argument for a federal, but he's not looking for it. Doesn't seem like the Republican Party's looking for it at that level. So, then we'll battle it out of the states.
Mm-hmm.
This was the big thing I was thinking about prior to this podcast and thinking about in anticipation of if we won. And I've kind of heard this before, is that Republicans, it seems like when we get in power, don't necessarily, we're not aggressive enough with it.
Yeah.
Like if the Democrats had gotten power, they were going to fundamentally just change our nation.
Yeah, totally.
And it's good that we're not so aggressive. In some sense, it's good that we respect and we're thoughtful and slow and try to build consensus or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think there's one thing to radically alter our nation, and it's different. And I think it's quite different to radically return our nation back to long-standing principles and values and constitutional rights.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be radical in our return, not maybe into something new and untested and unconstitutional, but in just returning to common sense truth that and justice and the Constitution. I think we need to be willing to have some very, very angry liberals.
Yeah.
I think we're somewhat afraid of that. And so whether it's the abortion issue, gay marriage, those are probably the two biggest ones. The Republicans are standing very clear and strong on the transgender issue.
Yeah. Transgender and men and women's sports.
Yeah, they're staying strong on that one, but they're backed off on the on the gay marriage one, and they've backed off to some degree on the abortion one.
Yeah.
As much as I'm so rejoicing that President Trump won, he's the most pro-life president we've had. So from what I understand.
Yeah.
And in action, what I would love to basically, I don't want us to be too timid.
Yeah.
I want us to go overboard and sort of and create just a backlash, which is the fear.
Yeah.
But I don't want us to be too timid either. And so I would love to see our political system on the conservative side and President Trump's administration, the senators, really conducting thorough conversations or polls or surveys with the nation and find out what is the most kind of extreme return to conservative values the nation is ready for now, and push for it.
I agree.
And alienate the most extreme 20%, but hopefully unify the 80%.
Totally.
Let's say that over half the nation is conservative, and let's say the 30% of liberals who are more center. Yeah. And I think figuring that out, but pushing that envelope with a little bit of courageousness is important. And so I want to, I'm not in their position exactly, so I want to support them and I want to give grace as they figure that out. But I do hope that they're asking out the question, that they're asking with a little bit of gusto and courage, how far can we push to aggressively and fast return back? Yeah. Particularly on those moral issues. On the other side, if they decide not to focus on those moral issues almost at all for 4 years, and they just make America healthy again, make America wealthy again, get rid of borders, make America secure, stop some of the wars around the world, and get rid of lots of the waste in the government, the bureaucracy, and the corruption, which is the primary things that he's running on. If he just runs on what he's running on primarily, that will be massively beneficial for the nation. Yes. And it is still much more faith friendly, and it's a great foundation point too then for future progress. Yes. So I'm optimistic it's kind of good either way. Yeah. But that was kind of my thought on some of that.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I wish I want them to be aggressive specifically on the ones I think really matter. I mean, I want there to be like a federal ban on transgender surgeries specifically for minors, like that first and foremost. That I think it's horrendous that children could go and get life-changing surgeries without their parents' consent and without their knowledge or knowing, and then return a different way. I think that needs to be a federal ban across the nation. I mean, for adults, I guess that's a different question. I mean, morally, I think it's wrong from a Christian standpoint, but I think it should not be legal for anybody under the age of 18 to go do that. And so ones like those, and even if there's an abortion ban up to 16 weeks, I think, which a lot of even conservatives say, okay, that's kind of the line. Like even if there was that across the board, and some of those ones, I wouldn't mind if Trump really pushed against abortion in that sense. And I'd want all the way, but those ones where it's like, okay, it's way past the line, but let's at least bring it to the line again, to some sort of normalcy that actually makes sense for our nation, you know?
Yeah, listen to my episode on abortion. 16 weeks is still not it's still horrendous.
Yeah, I agree.
But biologically, actually, how it developed there, it's still horrendous.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'd be better than like the general consensus right now, which is somewhere between 22 and 25.
Exactly.
So yeah, it'd be like 8 to 10 weeks, or 8 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
Closer. So whatever my math is on that, so that would be good.
Yeah.
But I do think I just my 2 cents. Even I'd push for even more aggressive, just because actually it's just so insane. When someone's
yes, I agree.
Abortion is insane, and so giving 16 weeks of insanity, that's 16 weeks too many.
Yeah.
And so I'd be, and then and you kind of, I feel a lot more comfortable with a 6 week. And for some reasons that I share in that episode, it's still 6 weeks too much, but for some reasons. Very interesting. It'd be interesting to see how this all comes. And I'll just throw out the 2 cents. I haven't done the level of research and really thought through thoroughly the way I did with the abortion issue.
Yeah.
The issue of gay marriage, which we've kind of passed over and accepted as like normal.
Yeah.
But only a few years ago, many of the states actually put into their constitutions affirming marriage between one man and one woman.
Yeah.
So it's now accepted as totally normal. That wasn't like that just a few years ago. And I don't think we need to I think that we should push back on that. I don't think we should just give up on that issue. Mm-hmm. I haven't given it as thorough of a thought to really separate, okay, there's what I believe morally as a Christian versus what's really, what are the stats on actual, like what's healthy and good for the nation versus what part the government should play in it.
Yeah.
What I think I already know is essentially this. The government should adhere to reality whenever possible.
Yeah. And
not change it. And that it appears that the redefining of marriage, which was formerly basically heterosexual marriage between one man and one woman, for I think all of the U.S. history and much before that, redefining that I think is what opened up the redefinition of gender.
Totally, yeah.
And other things. Sense. It's like if we could just decide truth, and then we open up. We're just in a big world of mess.
Can of worms.
So I've already teased out and thought I would feel already just better if it was just if there was same-sex marriage and there was traditional marriage, and you actually called them differently, and you built laws accordingly. Even if they were the same laws or different, even that, just the clarification, it is not the same.
Yeah.
In the same way that, like anything where someone's if. That's why, like, we protect brands and trademarks. If someone's had Joe's Pizza Shop for 30 years, and you open up a pizza shop and you say it serves totally different kinds of pizza.
Yeah.
It doesn't even serve pizza; it serves sandwiches, and you call it Joe's Pizza Shop. Joe, the first Joe, would be rightly entitled to go, we are not the same.
Yeah.
And I've been at this a long time, and you're saying it's the same. You may be great, it may be fine, maybe you'll be great, very successful restaurant, but let's not conflate our terms here.
Totally.
So for nothing else, I think that's part of it. I think we got to push back on that. But beyond that, I'll leave that for another day, another podcast.
I like it.
One thing that was interesting with the Supreme Court that I heard tonight is that it's very possible that Trump will, the Justice Samuel Alito and Justice Thomas, two conservative Supreme Court justices will probably retire in Trump's term.
Yeah.
Which will allow him to appoint 2 more conservative justices. So it's a conservative for a conservative.
Yeah.
But who will then presumably be in the Supreme Court for decades.
Yeah.
That would end up being 5. I don't know if any president has appointed more. That would be 5 Supreme Court justices he would have appointed.
Wow.
So that once again, and I do think there are because I do feel the sovereignty of God on this election, on what's been happening with President Trump and the nation, and it's that question: does God cause it or does He use it?
Yeah.
I don't think God caused lots of the corruption and injustice. I don't think He was tempting people to sin. They chose to sin or be corrupt or whatever. But I do think at the same time God is guiding history. He's using it. He's judging, I think, the corruption, revealing the corruption in our nation. And I do definitely see some silver linings in Trump winning now versus 4 years ago.
Yes.
One, I think that it revealed the bias of the media way more. It showed the level of corruption on the Democratic Party and their craziness and the willingness they had to do lawfare. But also, I do wonder that if he had been elected 4 years ago, hopefully another Republican would be in right now. But if it hadn't been, then the next 2 Supreme Court justices may have been liberal. Yeah. But by that 4-year delay, it sets him up perfectly to potentially appoint those 2 justices.
And there's 7 spots in the Supreme Court?
9.
9 spots in the Supreme Court?
If memory serves, there's 9.
Okay. And how many of them are Republican?
I think it's 5-4 right now.
5-4?
Might even be 6-3.
Yeah.
So we have a clear majority.
And we could put in 2 more Republicans.
Yeah, it'd be swapping out Republican for Republican.
Okay.
But what it does is if it happened during a Democratic term, they would appoint a much more Democratic,
conservative,
more liberal justice who's going to then be there for decades.
Yes.
So it would mean that he would have appointed in whatever that is, like an 8-year span, or up to, I guess, a 12-year span. He would have appointed 5 young justices that will probably be in the court for decades.
Yes. And they don't get elected. They're there for life until they retire.
Yeah.
Wow.
Till they choose to retire.
Okay. Interesting. That's
so
great.
It's a super powerful place. Any thoughts on that or with Supreme Court?
I think it'll be good for our nation for a long time. I mean, I'm not quite sure on how much power they hold. I know they make
a lot.
Extremely important decisions between those 9. All men, or maybe there's a woman.
No, it's men and women.
Men and women. Yeah, I believe they make very powerful decisions. So I pray and hope that if they retire, whoever he selects are just God-fearing men and women that'll love our nation and do what's right for our nation and for God. So
totally. I think one of the things, just the final thought on the Supreme Court, is if a lot of these things, if Vice President Kamala had been elected tonight, she said she was going to basically eliminate the filibuster, which is a protection for the minority party. Was going to basically railroad in national abortion protections. With I think no religious exceptions, forcing religious institutions to be a part. If I understand that right. And she was going to, they had threatened she was going to fundamentally change in the Supreme Court and basically add more seats and basically take away
fill it with
the legal majority that the Republicans have. They were going to undermine that.
Wow.
And so we'd have been looking at a very different 4 years with the Supreme Court. Very different 4 years with the Senate and the House and all that, at least in theory. And now that we've seen how it played out, she would have won, but she would have lost the Senate. If in some odd way, and maybe the House, so she wouldn't have maybe had as much power as we feared. We didn't know that 5 hours ago. But and if Trump had not been such a compelling candidate, I don't know if the senators would have won. I don't know if the House would have won. Like they're all tied. But we are in a very different and much better. I heard one, I think, commentator basically say like, if nothing else, one of the biggest benefits Trump is going to have in the next 4 years is he's not Kamala. Is he's not going to do these things. They're going to, I think, immediately stem the tide on immigration, illegal immigration. While he talked about having legal immigration, he talked about that in his victory speech. And legal is amazing. They're going to stop the illegal immigration. They're going to stop some of the I think the bad financial trade deals. They're going to work to bring peace. They're gonna break off some of the crippling environmental policies and get back to drilling. And, so a lot of really cool things kind of right off the bat. It's very cool.
It is very cool. It's very exciting. I'm excited for the next 4 years. It seems hopeful and exciting and all of that.
Well, that's a good segue to the final question. Anyone listening, I invite you to ask it to yourself as well. What's next for you? As you go to bed tonight, knowing who the president of the United States is going to be for the next 4 years of your life. How old will you be when he's done, approximately?
I'll be 26.
So you know who's president until you're 26. That's a really beneficial. A lot of times on this podcast, it's not political. I'm talking about life planning and focus and efficiency,
Yeah.
and knowing who your president's going to be for the next 4 years, having that kind of clarity. I know, I think it was the Dow Jones futures or something was way up, and Bitcoin was way up.
Yep.
And from what I understand, like there's some optimism right now, but knowing just what's happening either way, but especially in this positive sense, man, that's so helpful for planning and building with sense of hope and continuity and kind of a sense of what it's going to be like. So that's just an aside. But so for you, what do you see for the next 4 years, just kind of in light of the elections or anything? Yeah, that kind of comes to mind.
Yeah, I think excitement. I mean, it's funny that it was Kamala's like punchline, but opportunity economy. I actually think there's gonna be like that sort of opportunity economy under Trump. Trump never said that, but there's a Kamala line. But I think it's actually more true under Trump that there's going to be opportunity for people to grow in whatever areas they want. For myself, I think there's just going to be greater opportunity for the housing market. Like, yeah, we said it as a joke, like, hey, we'll be able to afford a house in these next 4 years, but it's realistic that we'll be able to afford a house within these next 4 years. I mean, which I think every young person wants to own a home one day. And one of the things that was polled and was generations before Gen Z, asking them, do you think your kids will live a better life or be able to own a home one day? And the majority answer was no, that they won't be able to live a financially better life or own a home. I really think it'll flip that we'll be able to own a home, that we'll be able to be financially successful and see America great again. Like, we're going to make it great again. Like, we've read stories of old, people saying, like, in the stories of old, you know, like, growing up in America and seeing it thriving and seeing the economy booming and everybody buying homes, is kind of being in like that baby boomer generation, you know, where everybody's making babies. Not that that'll happen specifically, but that just like it'll almost be like coming home from like war. We're not like coming home from war, but like coming back from something that was so devastating that it's like hopeful. We're all ready to rebuild. Like, I think a lot of new businesses are going to grow. I think new things are going to be created. I mean, with Elon and just different companies and everything, I think it's going to be really cool next 4 years and beyond. I'm hopeful beyond these 4 years. I mean, I want to live longer than these 4 years. So
you will, God willing. You know.
Yeah. So what's next for me is like seeing these next 4 years flourish, but then hopefully the next 50, 80 years of my life flourish. So
cool. And I think for me on this, one of the biggest things, and obviously, you know, as I'm focusing on this podcast and the community that we're building here, is I see it as a 4-year reprieve of an age of censorship.
Yes.
And I hope it's not just a reprieve. I hope it's the tide that we go away from censorship, which is really scary and dangerous to liberty and truth and wisdom and our very health and lives and all that, as we've seen over the last few years. And I see it as like, okay, there's 4 more years of the federal government, at least as much as controlled by the Trump administration, is going to be pro-religion and faith, common sense, and free speech. And so I see it as my job to speak as loudly and boldly, as aggressively as I can, because I don't know how long this window is going to last. And I think when I saw when 5 hours ago or 6 hours ago with the election, when I didn't know if I was going to have 4 years where almost immediately my words could maybe be deemed as hate speech and illegal and censored, the fact that it's not going to be like that for the next 4 years, God willing, as it seems, is such a celebration. It's so good. I'm such a big fan of free speech, even if I don't agree with all of it. And so that's probably one of my biggest I want to get to work these 4 years. I want to sow some seed into the ground, because I think there's going to be some financial seed. Because I think there's going to be some money made in these 4 years.
Totally.
There's going to be this is like saying, almost like people come back from war. Not only was there a baby boom after the war, but there was, I believe if I understand right, there was a financial boom. For a variety of reasons. And so I think this is going to be a booming 4 years.
I think so.
And we'll have to watch out for certain things. We don't want to get too high and mighty on our success or whatever, and lose the focus and lose. But quite the opposite. We were fighting hard just to survive.
Yeah.
And now I want to fight hard for the thriving of our nation. Obviously, as a believer, that I was just worried about the economy of our nation, worried about the soul of our nation.
Yeah.
And that's where things like truth and the proper definition of terms and the proper definition of what is gender and marriage and sexuality and morality is so important. And some of that will be in the governmental legal space, and a lot of that's just going to be in the free speech and communication of us as a culture.
Yeah.
In the town square, the marketplace of ideas. And I look forward to and kind of intend to get to work and I'm so thankful we got 4 more years of such a strong president like President Trump.
Me too.
And I'm not going to take for granted that the next 4 either are going to be there or are going to be there unless we really fight to now protect some of the liberties that we almost just lost.
Yes, I agree.
And so that's kind of where I'm at. And I'd say, let's leave that question as we wrap up. Hopefully this is just a fun one.
Yeah.
Go MAGA. I'm definitely very much a fan and really kind of love President Trump and Vice President Vance and that whole team and what they've done and the sacrifices they've done. Whatever you feel about that man particularly, hopefully we can all agree we want America to be great and great again and thriving in every sense of the word. And so if you were listening to this and you had hoped that Vice President Kamala had won, man, I know you're probably super disappointed. I've been on the losing side of elections before. Yeah. Let's let our mutual prayer be that God will use the president-elect Trump to really bless and make America flourishing, and that hopefully you'll experience that yourself as well.
Yeah.
I'll leave you with that question. What's next for you? I do think this is as the primary kind of position of this podcast is just seeking wisdom, self-development, character, and moving forward the goals and missions in life you have, particularly the ones that you feel are really from God. Moments like these are incredibly pivotal and are like they're opportune. They're a perfect moment, almost like a new year.
Yes.
And this new transition is a perfect time to decide how you're going to spend the next 4. As President Trump spends the next 4 years of his life, as in his aging, some of his last years of life. Hopefully he has decade or 2 but
totally
serve in the nation. How are you going to spend your 4 years? How am I going to spend my 4 years?
Yeah.
What mission and cause are you going to aggressively and with love push forward, so that when we're sitting here in November 2028, we can go, man, we're proud of the work we've done, and we're just moving even more and more forward. With that, thanks for being on with us again for the podcast, Jeremiah. Your second time on the podcast. Thanks for being with me.
Yes, thank you for having me again.
Fun doing some bro talk and chatting and hearing the thoughts. But with that, God bless you. Have a great night, or I guess you'll probably be seeing this in the day whenever you're listening. I'll be getting to sleep soon myself. It's late. And we'll see you next week for another episode. And with that, wherever you're watching or listening, rate, review it, share it with a friend. God bless you. See ya.